Good afternoon. I'm Mrs. Hileman, and I'm the Region 4 East advisor for Hosa. And I'm doing this little tapes today to assist the advisors with their affiliation process as well as registration for conferences. And just to kind of orient you to the Hosa website. So the first step you're going to want to do is type in hosa.org. And this is the National Hosa website. There's lots of information. Of course, you can go learn more about Hosa, learn about their mission, some of the history, and meet the different staff online here. But I'm going to take you over here to the Advisor tab, and particularly most of the people that are going to be viewing this tape are local advisors. So if you'll just click on Local Advisor, and lots of resources come up that you may be able to utilize in your classroom. Suggestions for how to establish your Hosa chapter in your school, as well as an entire handbook to assist you with your first few years trying to learn about Hosa and how to affiliate it into your school. There's different lesson plans and activities that you'd be able to use. Again, Hosa is co-curricular, and suggested participation comes from the Florida Department of Education. So we have lesson plans that are already set that you would be able to utilize, as well as partnerships throughout the Medical Reserve Corps, National Technical Honor Society that your school may already participate with. Lots of professional development are available here for you as well to learn more about the competitive events and learn more how to develop your leaders throughout your Hosa chapter at your school. Make sure that you're checking out that Advisor tab. Now for competitions, as you're getting your students ready for competitions, you want to go to the competition tab here. And specifically, of course, you always want to review rules and regulations. This is going to list all of the different rules, the way the students are allowed and expected to behave, code of conduct, dress code, which is of course the Hosa attire, the suit with the patch over their heart. So you want to make yourself familiar and your students familiar with that. However, what they're specifically going to be interested in is looking at the tab that says guidelines. This is the competitive event guidelines. I tell my students that the guidelines are like their Bible to their event, and they need to eat, sleep, and live their guidelines. They need to know them inside and out. So as an example, let's look at medical assisting. Now the students are required to have a copy of this guideline with them whenever they come to compete, whether it's at nationals, at internationals, at state, or at the regional level. They must have a copy of their guidelines. That's proof to the judges that this student has reviewed and read these guidelines. They understand what their event requirements are. When we look here at medical assisting, just as an example, it tells you the textbook and the edition that this event is based out of. So hopefully you have some of those textbooks in your classroom. If you don't, it may be something you want to consider getting a set of to benefit your students. As you see, this guideline is very, very specific. It goes through dress code of what the students are expected to wear. Now with medical assisting, it says that They could be in proper business attire or Hosa uniform or appropriate for that occupational area. So for medical assisting, it would be appropriate for them, if they were to choose, to wear medical scrubs. That would be appropriate. If students were doing, let's say, parliamentary procedure, the expectation would be that they would be in business attire or official Hosa uniform only. There's no reason why you would do parliamentary procedure in scrubs. So students need to watch that. Make sure they follow the dress code. They do get bonus points for proper dress. They don't lose points for not being dressed appropriately, but they don't get the bonus points. With medical assisting, there's 2 rounds to the medical assisting event. The first round is a written test. We will be doing online testing for Region 4 East this year. The online testing will be January 9th through the 13th. That will occur at your home school. And I have emailed you information about the online testing, setting up a proctor, and getting the students' codes. So make sure that you print that form out when you get the email from me. This is going to explain the percentages of, if the student wants to know, well, how much should I focus in on infection control? You can see that infection control is 15% of the entire test. So infection control is pretty important because that's weighted almost as high as the office procedures portion of the written test. The test, it tells you it's a 50-question multiple choice exam. So the students will take that after they finish, after the testing window closes on January 13th. I will receive the results, and based on the skills that they're going to have to perform at the regional event, some of the students may not make it to the second round. It will be based on their test scores. So they always want to score as high as they possibly can. That's a very important written test they need to study for. They are given a limit of an hour to complete that test, and on the online testing forum, the test will shut down at an hour. You'll see a countdown on your advisor's screen, and it will shut down in an hour. So make sure you let the students know if they're approaching the end of their 60 minutes, they need to be sure to answer those questions, or they're just going to be marked incorrect. If your student makes it to the second round, these are the skills right here that are listed that they will be responsible for. Usually we will have them do 2 skills. Occasionally it will be 3 skills. A lot of times it depends on which skills are chosen. Myself or the event coordinator are the ones who choose the skills that will be performed that year, and they are kept a secret until the day of the event. The student will not know what skills are required until they walk in the door. When they walk in the door, then they'll know. It is best to teach your students to not disclose which skills are going on in the room to the other competitors. After all, that's only going to benefit the other competitors and actually hurt your student if they tell the other competitors, and probably make them not do as well in the event. So it's best to encourage them to keep that a secret, even though they've already completed their event and they know what skills are being tested. When we go further down on the guidelines here, you'll see that there is a checklist for the students that the student is required to provide. Let's see here, where is it? There's some sample questions here. for students to look at. Also, a common place students like to study is Quizlet. There's a lot of questions on Quizlet related to Hosa and the various events, so that may assist them as well. Now here you're actually looking at the judges' sheets. The students are actually given the judges' sheets. These are the same sheets that will be photocopied and given to each judge to fill out as they watch your student perform their skill. I encourage my students to study these like a script to a play. If they memorize it step by step, then they're not going to forget when they get nervous because they've rehearsed it and studied it step by step, and they're going to literally remember it like a script to a play. So as an example, this one here is perform a telephone screening. The first thing is they should answer the phone promptly in a polite and pleasant manner. They should identify themselves saying, "Hi, I'm Mrs. Hileman from Dr. Smith's office. How can I help you today?" Their voice should be clear and distinct. They should speak at a moderate rate, expressing consideration for the needs of the caller, paying attention to what the caller is saying to them. If they do all of that, these 6 points here would be awarded, and the student would be continuing on in their skill. It continues down, and you see how the judge is able to award full credit. They can award partial credit, or they can award 0 points for a skill if they feel that the person did not adequately complete that skill. And it goes all the way through the entire skill for the entire number of points that are possible for this skill. Now, it is a requirement of Hosa that the student must obtain a minimum of 70% of the possible points for that skill in order to be recognized with a medal. What does that mean for your student? Well, that means we could have 20 competitors in medical assisting, and if none of them got higher than 70%, which would be what, approximately 7 points. So 22 minus 7, so about 15. So if nobody scored higher than a 15 out of the possible 22 points, even though we maybe have 20 competitors, there would be no students recognized as winners. They must obtain greater than a 70% in order to be recognized. And that's regional level, state level, national, and international. Those are in the general guidelines and rules. Again, every single event is printed out here. This is the message form that they would be expected to complete when they took that telephone message. You're given that message form for the student to be able to practice with. I always set up in my lab, I set up a little telephone area where the students doing this event, I make a whole bunch of these copies and cut them apart and put them in a little pad, like a little clipboard, so that they can practice writing down and taking the notes for the messages, and then they'll bring me the message and I'll assess did they do it correctly or not. And then it moves to skill number 2, which this is create an electronic chart, and so on. It goes through all of the skills. So you see why these guidelines are so important. If you're memorizing exactly what the judge is looking for me to do, then you can be sure that you do it properly. Okay? So hopefully that'll answer some of your questions about, and I'm probably going to do this wrong, some of your questions about the guidelines. I just got off the site here. I'll go back. So that was under competitions and guidelines. There's also other resources here. There's some various internships that are offered through Hosa, as well as other publications and resources that you have access to, all here on the website. I'll let you discover all of that on your own. Now, the important thing we need to talk about now is the login. So right here up in the upper right, you'll see login, and we're just going to click that. Here you're going to see various things you can log in for. When we get to that online testing week, January 9th through the 13th, this is where your students will come. They'll hit that login and they'll go to take a test, and they'll click on Take My Test. You'll provide them their login and password to allow them access to their test, and then they'll be able to do their online testing. In preparation for online testing, you or someone you choose needs to serve as a proctor. Right here is where your proctor will come to sign in so that they have access to the tests and can open them for the students. This is member tracking activity. This has to do with the Medical Reserve Corps affiliation and Barbara James Community Service Award, the recognition events. So your students would enter right here their hours that they've completed for community service, and then you would have to go in your email or your account and approve it. But this is where the kids will find that. And down here, this is what you're looking for, local chapter advisors. This is where you're going to go, and you're going to hit Access Chapter Advisor System. Now we're going to go under local chapter, and you should have already received your member number, which is your school membership number and password. So I'm logging in here for Winter Haven High School because that's the school that I teach at. And this is the page. This is what your page is going to look like when you log in. Right here, the second line here says complete affiliation process or application. And that's what I'm going to complete today. I'm almost done with it. I have one more student I left that I had not affiliated so that I could show you how to do it. All of this, I'm sorry, I went fast. All of this is, my name, school address. It asks principal, things like that. You're going to put what course or what it is you're teaching. Click any of these boxes if they were to pertain to you or your school. It just has to do with demographics that they keep at the state and national level. These were previous students who've been members. They're not members this year, so I have not affiliated them. But Hosa makes it easy because if they were, I could just click their button and they would be affiliated again. But that's not what I'm doing here. So this is what you want is your membership list, and you're going to add in every one of your students. And you're going to they're all drop down boxes. You do need to know the age level, the grade level for each student. And you're just going to add them in. You don't have to have phone number, but I ask all of my students to provide me a email, because that way Hosa is able to communicate with that student and offer them, let them know different things that are going on, that kids may even know something going on in Hosa at the national level before I even know it. So of course, make sure that once you enter it, make sure that it's accurate. So I entered in Griffin, and I put his email in. Make sure you always hit Save All Changes. These are the only 2 students I have left to affiliate. I've already done my full affiliation, but I had a couple of students who brought me money late, so I'm affiliating them. You can do your affiliation in multiple applications. You don't have to wait until the very end and then affiliate 100 kids. I typically affiliate in October, and then again in early November, which is when I put my students' deadline to pay their money to join Hosa. But as typical with most years, you have students who come to you right at the end, here beginning of December, and say, oh, please, I want to join. Can I please join? And of course, I'm never going to say no. So now I'm doing a final application. So here I'm going to hit next. This is just confirming that I'm aware that we're going to have to pay $20 for national dues and $24 for state dues, which I'm aware of that. One word of advice is never enter a student's name in that affiliation box until you have gotten paid the affiliation dues. And the reason I tell you that is because once they get submitted to National Hosa, you are responsible to pay that $22. You must pay the $22. So if the next day the student comes to you and says, oh, my mom said I can't have $22 to join a Hosa, and you already sent their name into Hosa, now you're going to have to pay the $22. They will not, there's not, and it's not okay to just take them out or call them up and say, oh, change their minds. They won't do it. So do not enter their name in until you know you have the money in your hand. And that's what this is saying here. It's telling you you will be paying if you have entered their name, and I'm about to hit done for my submissions. They won't even discount if you realize you put a student in twice and there's a duplicate submission. You put Susie Q and you wrote her in there twice, you're going to pay $22 per Susie Q. So both of them. So you don't want to do that. Make sure you make your list and check it twice, just like Santa Claus. So I'm going to click done. That means I have submitted that affiliation. Now you're going to come back over here and you see here where it says view and print affiliation account statement. That means what do I owe Hosa? How much money do I owe Hosa? And what did that just do? Oh, here it is right here. Okay. All right, so I still owe Hosa for some other stuff. That some other affiliation memberships that I haven't paid for yet, but right here, December 1st, are the two affiliations that I just submitted for the $44, and here's the two students that it's for. So when I hit print, I'm going to take this to my business office and I'm going to submit this for payment, and that's everything at least that Polk County requires to get a bill paid, and I will be able to pay the affiliation fees for my students. All these other ones are already in the works. So make sure you don't miss that that step. Make sure you pay. Your dues are expected to be paid within 30 days after you do your affiliation application. So if your schools are anything like Polk County and our school, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get a check from the school district. So you need to submit your paperwork in a timely manner to get the paperwork. If you need a full membership directory, you want to see the names of all of your students who are involved in Hosa, you're going to do that here. And at this point, because this is my final affiliation application, I will save this into my computer now. And this has a list of all of my students, including myself. Don't forget to affiliate yourself as an advisor. This has everyone in here so that I print this out as an example out of my computer when we have meetings so that students don't have to sign in. They just have to initial by their name. Make sign-ins at meetings easier and I think the kids enjoy it because they really feel like they belong to something. Their name is on the list and they like that. So when we move on to conference registration, which is down below here, you're going to click on conference registration, and the registration that is coming up for us is our regional competitive event, which is This was our fall conference, so don't click on that one because that's already closed. Here it is. 2017 Region 4 East Winter Haven Competitive Event Conference. So we're going to click on that because that's the event that we're preparing for in January. This already has myself registered for the event. There is no fee for advisors. There is a $10 fee for students. So I am just going to randomly choose a student here. This one right here. This guy, Falenci, I know that he is doing medical reading. So I'm going to just fill in the blank drop down there. And then down here lists every event that we offer for Hosa. So these are the emergency preparedness, the health professions, and then the health science events, and his event is a health science event. Here it is, medical reading. And I just put a click there. That puts him in that event. Then I hit submit. And there he is. It tells me that he is registered, that he is a secondary student. He's going to do medical reading. It's going to cost $10 for him to attend the event. And I could delete him if I needed to, if I had done it incorrectly, or I could edit it if he comes to me next week and wants to change his event. Once you complete all of your registration, and registration is due by December 13th at 3 p.m., the state office will be closing the computer program down at that point. You will not be able to register for regional conference anymore because that only gives me about a month for preparation time. So that's the shortest amount of time that I can get it done in. But please do not forget to go, once you finish your registration, don't forget to go up here where it says invoice and click invoice. And this will show you, here it is. It's a nice invoice. It tells me that I am registered as an advisor at no charge and that my student is registered in medical reading and he has a $10 charge. This invoice also is expected to be paid within 30 days of the submission. This invoice should be paid prior to the competitive event. The competitive event is scheduled January 21st, 2017. It is at Winter Haven High School in Winter Haven, Florida. And so you need to be sure that you submit the invoice on the 13th of December so that hopefully as we return to school in January, they'll be able to be ready to have a check cut and that amount is paid. Let me go back here. All right. Once you're done doing your registration, you print your invoice and log off and you're done. If you have students who are doing Barbara James Award and you've gotten an email from Hosa saying you have students that you need to approve their activity, right up here on the right side, this activity review, that's what that means. So you're going to go in here. I don't have any students who've done any yet this year, but if I did, their information would actually appear here. And it would say to me, Susie Q has done 10 hours of volunteer work at Winter Haven Hospital. And I would either know that Susie Q does that and already verified those hours, or I would know I need to speak to Susie Q and contact the hospital to verify those hours. Then I have the ability to approve or deny those hours. The hours do not count for the student in the database until the advisor has approved them. So if the student has put in hundreds of hours and you have never gone in and pressed approve, the student is not going to be recognized at the state level for their volunteer time. So make sure that if you have students telling you that they've done this, that you go in and take care of approving, verifying and approving. And again, you want to look at the guidelines for the Barbara James Award to know exactly which hours are allowed and which hours are not. As an example, Hosa officers who work to plan a community service event through their Hosa meetings are not allowed to use those Hosa service hours as Barbara James Award hours. Barbara James Award hours are only for volunteer hours that have benefited the student in a medical arena or a medical capacity. So if they do volunteer hours at their church, those hours would not count unless they were assisting with teaching CPR, hands-only CPR at their church. That would count because that's medically related. They were volunteering at the local hospital, volunteering at a hospice, volunteering at the Humane Society or the SPCA, because we also include veterinary medicine, of course, in Hosa, things like that. So make sure you review the guidelines to be sure that your students are meeting, are doing their volunteer hours in the appropriate locations to be able to get credit. I think that's everything I wanted to talk to you about today. So if you have any questions, of course, you can rewatch this video, or you certainly can email me at elizabeth.hileman@polk-fl.net. And I look forward to seeing you in January at the regional competitive event. Have a great day.